Anita Baker's incredible album, Rapture, was released on March 20th, 1986, and I love this record. It went 5 times platinum. That's over 5 million records. It won 2 Grammy Awards, and it reached as high as number 9 on the Billboard Top 10 charts. R&B, smooth jazz, soul, gospel, it had all kind of influences to it. Anita Baker's second album made the little lady with a big voice a superstar. And you know why I'm talking about it. Rapture features an incredible group of bassists on the album that composed some of Anita Baker's musical influences during that time, both as players and as co-composers on the album. The album's origins go back to a Detroit powerhouse funk group called Chapter 8 that Anita Baker sang with in the late 1970s. She called on Michael Powell, the guitarist of that band, to produce 7 of the 8 tracks that appear on the Rapture album. In his own words, Mike Powell produced Rapture more or less like another Chapter 8 album. Using mostly live playing with minimal overdubs, Mike, along with Miss Baker, created a special album that endures to this day. As always, I'm going to use my MTD 635 and my trusty Fender Jazz Getty Lee Signature with very little to no processing, going straight into Logic to explore some of the wonderful bass lines on this album. Let's get to it. Freddie Washington is one of the most iconic bass guitarists to ever play. He has hundreds of credits to his name, including Patrice Rushen, Michael Jackson, and Steely Dan, to name a few. He is bona fide studio royalty, and his contribution is felt right away from the first track. About his incredible groove, Freddie said this: "Well, I feel the pulse of the song in halftime, which gives it a much more laid-back feel. I focus in on the groove and then work with that rather than against it. Every style of music has to have its groove, whether it's soul, funk, fusion, pop, or whatever, and that's what I focus on, the groove." During the recording of this session, Freddie was involved with recordings by Whitney Houston, her first album, Barry Manilow, and Patti LaBelle. And for the session, he used his very trusty 1972 Fender Precision bass, but also a Yamaha BB3000. This was right before he started playing Ken Smith instruments. Check out the way he plays on the first verse of the song. Super precise groove. I'm noticing he plays right up to beat 2 and then cuts off right when beat 2 starts. I'm thinking also he probably played his Yamaha on this. It has a little punch, an edge that I don't hear from the P bass. It's amazing, and of course, if you know this record at all, you know, I mean, that's Rapture, right? The whole song is built off of these 4 amazing chords, very gospel sound, B flat major to E flat minor especially. Also, dig how the groove goes from long and more legato to very rhythmic and punctuated once the keyboard starts playing eighth notes in the second part of the tune, the chorus. Really cool. This song was co-written by Miss Baker, Gary Bias, who incidentally plays saxophone for Earth, Wind and Fire, and Louis Johnson. Wait a second. Yes, that Louis Johnson. Now, the original title of the song came from the first line, and it was a ballad, believe it or not. So when Anita got her hands on it, they reworked it to be faster, and they added some more elements. And lo and behold, in 1987, it won the Grammy for Best R&B Song for all three of these composers. This song, man, amazing, beautiful. The band leaving all this space and these incredible fills that Freddie kind of fills up with these pentatonic things. Just beautiful. Check out what he plays on the second verse. You can really hear the P bass on this track, and it sounds like he has fresh strings, and it's very bright. When I was trying to play this track too, it forces you to play with a light touch because you don't want the bass to really react back that much. Just beautiful how he plays on this. Now, this beautiful song was written by David Lasley. Now, you might not know that name, but you might know who he is if you see him. David Lasley sang backup for James Taylor for years. He's the blonde guy that you always saw singing behind him. He's also a prolific songwriter. His songs have been recorded by Chaka Khan, Bonnie Raitt, and Aretha Franklin. His original version from 1983 is just beautiful, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was something that Anita Baker loved to listen to.
You bring me joy when I'm down.
Now, I know that Sweet Love was the big hit off of this record, but I've always considered this song to be the signature song of the record. This was one of two songs that were first cut in Detroit with Detroit musicians in a Detroit studio. David Washington plays bass, and David Washington's connection with Anita Baker goes back to Chapter 8. He was the bass player for that band, and he plays his butt off on 3 of the tracks on this album. Strong R&B bass playing is about longs and shorts. This groove is a study in length and space. Check out the verse. Now, listen to the same thing with keyboards. It comes to life. The keyboards are playing this anticipated figure against what the bass is doing, and it really makes the whole song just pop. Dig what happens at the end of the recording. One of the staples of a great R&B record is during the fade out when your lead singer really just lets loose. Now, according to Mike Powell, on some of the songs, Anita would get to the end of the song and didn't want to sing anymore. She'd say, "I'm not singing on the vamp, I'm gonna let it play." And we let it play. On Caught Up in the Rapture, she didn't want to sing at the end. It ended with the guitar playing. Shame on you if you're not hip to one of the greatest living bass players on the planet, Jimmy Haslip. An incredible bassist, composer, producer, Jimmy's played with Chaka Khan, Gino Vanelli, Jeff Lorber, and he spent over 30 years as the original bass player with the jazz group the Yellow Jackets. The rhythm section of the first version of that band was Jimmy Haslip on bass and the great Ricky Lawson on drums. Jimmy recalls, "It turned out that Anita was a fan of the Yellow Jackets, and so she asked Ricky to contact me and schedule me for the session. I believe that it was the last song to record for the Rapture project." Now, this was right around the time that the Yellow Jackets were completing their album Samurai Samba, and Jimmy was a fan, having heard Anita from her first record. To the session, he brought with him his 5-string Bubinga Tobias bass. 5 strings not being quite standard instruments yet in the studios in LA. His signal chain went like this: Tobias into a Simon Systems Active DI into the board, and I think it sounds beautiful. This is one of the baddest grooves on the whole record. It's a little tricky to play, but Jimmy sets the whole tone with this line he plays. And when we add the keys to that, it comes to life. The slash chords in this song and the slash chords on the whole album bring this music to life unlike anything else you'd hear on pop radio at the time. Also, make sure you catch that flex that he plays in the bridge. I was actually surprised to find out that this song was a cover written by Rod Temperton. Yeah, that Rod Temperton wrote this song for Manhattan Transfer in 1983. It appears on their record Bodies and Souls. Now, this song is in the not so familiar key of F sharp minor, and the bass line is pretty wicked. Now, when you go back and you listen to the original version, the Manhattan Transfer version, you'll hear just about everything Anita does on her album. The same tempo, the same key, even the floaty stuff in the intro, the bass line too. My guess is that she listened to this music and probably really dug it and couldn't wait for her opportunity to do it. Anita brought live musicians in, and once again, it gives it this organic, soulful feel that you just can't match. The only track not produced by Mike Powell This one features LA 1980s studio royalty. Paul Jackson Jr. on guitar, Greg Fillinganes on keys, J.R. Robinson on drums, and the great Neil Steubenhouse on bass. Neil's resume reads like a who's who. During just that year alone, 1985, he and his heavily modified Fender Precision bass played on records by Lionel Richie, Dancing on the Ceiling, Billy Joel, and Dionne Warwick. In fact, an interesting piece of trivia, he recorded this exact same song that very same year for Miss Dionne Warwick. Neil is a master of the simple, solid groove. I don't think there's anybody on the planet that can play a dotted quarter eighth rhythm as well as Neil Steubenhouse. He's also a master of the one beat pop bass fill. Listen to what he does on beat 4 here, how he plays a 6/5 movement to fill in that beat and make this groove just drive. According to Neil, they worked on 2 tracks over 2 days for this album, but apparently only one made the record. I've also heard a lot of urban legend about Louis Johnson participating in sessions, and a lot of talk about Nathan East participating in sessions, so I'm sure there were other songs out there. Although eventually Nathan became the first touring bassist with Anita Baker after this album came out. Now this is the Freddie we all know, killing with his thumb on a P bass with nice, fresh, bright sounding round wounds. Controlled, grooving, bumping. Now this is a crazy hard key to play in, E flat minor. No open strings you can use. But according to producer Mike Powell, they tended to jump around during the sessions and experiment with keys, moving up, moving down. So I was thinking perhaps, maybe, Freddie tuned down or up to suit whatever the key was so that he could be really comfortable with slapping in it. I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Still a great line. And with a great flex in the bridge by Freddie. The chord is G7 and he slides up to grab that B and F in the most perfect way. The album closer doesn't disappoint. The last track was actually one of the very first to be recorded, back in Detroit in a Detroit studio with a Detroit rhythm section. An original song by Miss Baker, you can really hear this slash chord concept in action. The bass line stays static throughout the song mostly, but the chords change on top of it. Listen. On the original recording, you can also hear a clavinet-y kind of keyboard doubling the bass and giving a little punch, particularly to that top note that happens in the bass line. Ironically, this is the fastest of all the songs on the record. On an album that seems content with staying below 100 beats per minute whenever possible, this one clocks in at about 127. We leave with a bounce. Rapture is quite the amazing record. I remember hearing it everywhere as a preteen, and for good reason. It's a wonderful collection of songs. It's very well produced, it's extremely well played, and of course, Miss Baker brings her own magic that ties it all together. During a time when people were using automation, doing record albums alone, using drum machines and synthesizers, Rapture made people want to use live musicians again. Sadly, Miss Baker has retired from performing live again, but fortunately we have this amazing piece of music that she left for all of us. If you haven't listened to it in a while, well, go put it on and don't stop yourself from singing along. Thanks for watching the video. I'd like to give a very special shout out and thank you to Jimmy Haslip and Neil Steubenhouse, who are invaluable with their information and their time when it came to me trying to put together this video. Thank you both, gentlemen. Please smash that like button if you like the video, and if you're not a subscriber and you like jazz, bass-centric content, all original, coming at you every single week, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care of yourself and please love your neighbor.